Let's look at page 21, exercise 3.1. And again, it's fill in the blanks. Number one, when the same words are found in premises and conclusion, it must be determined that they do not have what sort of meanings? Equivocal or ambiguous would be acceptable too. Blank definition lists the necessary and sufficient qualifications in the definiens. What is, I'm sorry? Connotative. That's the answer. What letter is that? L. Okay. What is the definiens? Okay, it's the actual definition rather than the term to be defined. Again, it's a Latin word for what you would call a definition. A blank definition explicitly mentions every person, place, or thing in the class. Definiendum. What kind of definition? Yes? D. A denotative definition. Clark gives the example of a qualified voter in the text. I use the example of a resident of Vancouver. The denotative definition of qualified voter is the actual list of proper names. The denotative definition of Vancouver resident is the list of proper names, such as a telephone book. Number 4, the relation between connotation and denotation is such that in many instances, if the connotation increases, the denotation, yes, C, decreases. Blank method is definition by classification based on the principle of dichotomous division. Anyone? Yes? J, the tree of porphyry. Dichotomous division. Remember, a dichotomy is splitting something in two. Di means two. Di. According to blank, in defining a term, one states the genus, then adds the difference to get the species. According to Aristotle. B. Blank definitions occur in situations where you have two definitions having the same intellectual content in the definiens. I, purely verbal. They're purely verbal or semantic. Since G, ostensive, definitions consist of pointing at the object, they are not verbal. Augustine has shown that ostensive definitions are impossible. Who can tell me what book he did that in? The teacher, De Magistro. Blank, meaning of a term, means that the term has a single meaning. Yes. K, univocal. The opposite of equivocal. Okay, let's turn to page, yes. Number 5. Did I skip it? I'm sorry. The relation between denotation and connotation is such that in many instances, if the denotation increases, the connotation decreases. C. Okay, now you had an exercise on page 23 of arranging these terms in series of increasing connotation. That means the definition of each succeeding term becomes more complex, more restrictive than the definition of the term before it or the terms before it. That's what increasing connotation means. Now keep in mind that this will generally mean decreasing denotation, but not strictly. Clark makes that point. That tends to be the case, but it is not always the case. As the connotation increases, the list tends to grow shorter. Recall his example of qualified voters. As you keep adding restrictions, they have to live here for so long. They have to be of a certain age. They have to be registered so long before they vote. They have to own property, whatever it might be. As you keep adding connotation, then you keep decreasing the number of people, generally speaking, who meet those rules. So let's look at number 1. Who would like to tackle it? Arrange it in order of increasing connotation. Which comes first?
Polygon.
Keep going.
Quadrilateral. Parallelogram. Rectangle. Square.
Does everybody see that? Polygon, quadrilateral, parallelogram, rectangle, square. There you have increasing connotation. Okay, number 2. Somebody else. Go ahead.
Atheist, theist, pagan, Christian, tolerant.
What do you think about that? Go ahead. Okay, I think that's the better order. Pagan is first. Why is pagan first? Why is an atheist first? Yes?
Pagan knows no God, and atheist disbelieves in God. So you have to acknowledge the God that you believe in.
Okay. Can a pagan be religious? And not believe in God? A pagan can be religious and not believe in God. So a pagan is the broadest word there. The next, within pagan, there's a subcategory called atheist. That's the next broadest. These are increasing connotations. And then we have theist. And finally, or not finally, but penultimately, Christian, and then Calvinist, in order of increasing connotation. How about the next one? The next one's very interesting. Who would like to tackle that one? Yes, sir.
Made under the law, being born, suffered the wrath of God, suffered death on the cross, and was buried in the grave.
Okay, I have no problem with that except the first 2. Why is made under the law of broader or lesser connotation than being born?
Because I would argue, well, because that's like the definition of law. So since it wasn't capitalized here, I took it to mean a broader law than the law of Moses, the law of law. So there were things that were created that are not born. Plants, for example.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's an interesting argument. I hadn't thought of plants. I would have structured them being born first and then made under the law, but everything else would be the same. Suffered the wrath next, suffered the death next, and then was buried and resurrected as increasing connotation. Okay, number 4. Anybody want to take that? Yes, sir?
First hear, then believe, then understand, then preach.
Hear, then believe, then understand, then preach. Anybody have a different order? Quite a few. Yes, sir, back there.
Hear, understand, believe, and then preach. That's definitely the Western way of thinking. Hebrew thought is that believe, hear, and believe, and understand.
Anybody have anything different from these 2? Yes, ma'am.
I have preach, hear the gospel, understand, and believe.
That's the one I would agree with as far as increasing connotation. Would you repeat it, please?
Preach the gospel, hear the gospel, understand, believe the gospel, or believe the gospel. Understand the gospel, believe the gospel.
Yes, sir?
Don't more people hear it than people who preach it, though?
But the preaching precedes the hearing.
But that's like another chronology, isn't it?
Right. But more people it's preached to more than hear. Go ahead.
Well, once you become a Christian, even though you're not in church, you'll preach.
What's this? Once you become a Christian?
That they're more to, if you, first of all, in the Bible it says that you can't hear unless there's a preacher.
Okay.
Okay, so on that premise, then when you hear and believe, then all those who are converted still preach the gospel, although they may not be preachers of the gospel preachers, but we're still preaching is sharing the gospel.
You're thinking of the verse, I think it's in Romans, how shall they believe unless they hear? How shall they hear unless there's a preacher? Yes, sir.
My thought is that I had to hear before I could believe. I had to believe before I could understand. I had to understand before I could believe.
How can you believe what you don't understand?
I think it has to come first. I think believing has to come first. Because I believe the gospel, and then I begin knowing it to find out.
It's impossible to believe what you don't understand. That would go along with the Roman Catholic doctrine of faith, of implicit faith, that we don't need to understand. We simply believe whatever the church teaches. But the Bible has quite a different idea of faith, that we understand the propositions. Of course, we understand them more fully the more we study after we believe them. But there has to be an initial understanding there or we can't believe it. If I were to say to you, let me think, quark est novum sacramentum. How many of you believe that? No one. You don't understand it. Paul argues that understanding comes first. It doesn't do anyone any good to hear words in any language, whether it's nonsense like I just spoke, or whether it's some foreign language or some foreign tongue. It doesn't do anyone any good. You cannot believe it if you don't know what it means. The understanding must precede the belief. Christ was persecuted because those who opposed him in some fashion understood his claims better than the disciples. They understood quite well who he claimed to be when he said, "Before Abraham was, I am." The Pharisees understood that quite well. The disciples caught on a little bit later. And some might argue that they didn't catch on fully until after the resurrection. But the unbelievers understood it quite well, and that's why they opposed him so strenuously. But to say that you can believe what you don't understand, I think is a serious mistake. So that's why I would argue in this example here, number 4, that understanding must precede believing. Yes, ma'am.
This is, you're talking, it seems to me, about a chronological activity here, but if you take it...
Well, not really, because belief, the definition of belief requires the concept of understanding. It is true, it has to be chronologically in that order too. But logically, the definition of Christian belief has to include understanding.
But what if you took it as the number of people? I mean, is that...
Well, don't be misled on that. Yeah, don't be misled on that. Remember the warning that Clark gives, that this tends to hold, this inverse relationship between connotation and denotation, but it doesn't always hold. When we get to number 7, I believe Jeremy pointed this out yesterday to me. When we get to number 7, we'll see that very clearly. Because in number 7, you have 2 individuals, Adam and Cain. So you can't get down any lower than 1 in this case. But let's do number 6 first here. Or 5. Who wants to try 5? Increasing connotation. Yes, sir. Number 5? No. That would be the last. Now remember, it's increasing connotation. Yes, sir. Preach the gospel, hear the gospel, understand the gospel, believe the gospel. Now, those who want to argue that preach the gospel should come at the end, I can see how you would understand that. because you have to hear it, believe it, understand it before you preach it. If that's the argument you wish to make. Yes, sir.
It all depends on how you saw preach, whether somebody's
That's right.
or whether you thought
That's right. Preach is ambiguous. Exactly right. Number 5. Let's try that one again. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Okay, did you get that? Sinner, immoral, moral, justified, righteous, sanctified. Anyone differ on that? Increasing connotation. Okay. Number 6. This is an easier one. Increasing connotation. Where do we begin? What's number 1 and number 6? Book. Okay, keep going. What's second? Okay. Okay. Now notice we don't put the New Testament after the Old Testament simply because the Old Testament has more books in it than the New Testament. It appears there because the definition of the New Testament includes some reference to the Old Testament. The definition of the Old Testament need not include a reference to the New Testament. Yes, sir?
that would be the same way that I organize it, but I have a question. Could it not be the book first, and then the Old Testament and the New Testament, and then the Bible was adopted? Because the Bible was not canonized until after.
Well, this is confusing chronology with the logic of it. And we have to be careful not to do that. Okay, number 7. This is interesting because, again, we have the names of 2 individuals here. Who wants to try it? Yes. Okay, creation, creature, mankind, Adam, Cain. Now, why would you list Adam before Cain? Well, that's true. Adam was the father of Cain. Okay, you're saying then in Cain's definition you have to refer to Adam, but in Adam's definition you don't have to refer to Cain. Okay, do you see that? Okay, number 8, a longer series, at least longer words here. Anyone? Let's see a hand, okay, back in the, halfway back there. Number 8, go ahead. Almost. Anybody have anything any different? Yes, sir.
Number, real number, integer, positive integer, real number, rational, and prime.
Anybody have anything else? Yes, sir.
Number, real number, rational number, integer, positive integer, and prime.
That's the correct order. You know, if you haven't studied all those things in your math studies, then that may be difficult to do that. Yes?
Definition is real number and definition is real number equals all numbers.
No. No. That question sort of presumes that you have some background in mathematics. Yes, sir? The order again is number, real number, rational number, integer, positive integer, prime. Okay, number 9. Let's have a hand on number 9. In increasing connotation, keep in mind the difference here between connotation and denotation. Yes, right there. Go ahead. Number 9. Okay, did everybody get that? Entity is the broadest, the least connotative. Next is living. Next is sensate. Plants are living, but they're not sensate. Rational. Not all sensate entities are rational. And then finally, speaking. Number 10. Let's have a show of hands here on number 10. Who's eager to try number 10? Yes, sir, in the black shirt.
Zero,
I don't agree. Let's see if anybody else disagrees.
Carry past directions while they know, for the directions waiting.
Now this is it. Some of these are ambiguous again, and that's where the difficulty comes in. The order I had, and I'll give this to you, and then we can feel free to disagree if you want. Number one is direction, as being the least connotative. Number two was path. 3 is way. 4 is broad way, and 5 is narrow way. And the reason I made direction first is that it doesn't specify any route. It's just a general direction as the least connotative. Now the ambiguity comes in with path and way, I suppose. And the reason I listed path first was that all that follows has the word way in it. Well, that's an interesting idea. Yes, go ahead.
I did direction last. And I put way could be any way. And then it's flex way, which is a broad way. And then there is a narrow way. And then there is, I'm going to put on the narrow way is the path, and then the path leads to the direction it's going.
Well, that's an interesting argument. And you can see how much it depends on one's understanding of the English words here. Yes?
If you consider the possible ambiguity here, then Broadway could be the final destination for the place in New York.
In the back.
The verb will follow up. This direction kind of of itself forces you to conclude some specific direction. When you say direction, it's got to be like a north or northeast or south. I mean, it needs to be very specific. And
well, that's essentially the argument this lady made. That's why she chose something else first. Way as being any way rather than a specific direction. Let's go on to number 11. Who wants to try number 11? Come on, students, they're not that bad. Okay, right here.
Number 11, I've got war, battle. Oh, I've got the two
Don't tease us.
Conflict, opposition, battle, and war.
Well, there are 5 terms there. Which one have you? Altercation, you've omitted? Okay. Anybody disagree? Yes, right here.
That's what opposition, altercation, conflict, battle, and war.
Yes, in the back.
I had opposition, conflict, altercation, battle, and war.
Almost right. Yes, sir?
I went opposition, altercation, conflict, war.
Almost right. I think the proper order, and I'll give you my argument here, is opposition as being the most general term. Conflict next. Altercation is a particular type of conflict. Conflict is not a particular type of altercation. Conflict next, then altercation. War is a more general category than battle. You define a battle by referring to a war, and so battle would appear last. So the order I came up with was opposition, conflict, altercation, war, battle, as being the most connotative, increasing connotation. Number 12. Anybody want to tackle number 12? Yes, right here. His order was neutrality, peace, agreement, cooperation, harmony. Anybody disagree? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'm rethinking this now, but I have agreement, cooperation, then I have neutrality, harmony, and
Well, I have some in the same order, but not many. Yes, sir. The red shirt. I think that's a more plausible order. Yes, in the back.
I think it's about cooperation and agreement. So I have neutrality, cooperation, agreement and
Well, that's an interesting observation. People can cooperate without agreeing. The order I had, I think, is slightly different from any that's been suggested here. I had neutrality first. Everyone seemed to agree on that. Then I had agreement, cooperation, harmony, and peace as being the highest level. Because it requires harmony.
We've had peace because we needed it the last couple of years. But I wouldn't argue that it's exactly harmonious. Or even that we've really cooperated for a while.
No, that's a good argument. It's a good argument.
So I think peace can happen if you're spread of the other guy. It has nothing to do with peace agreement. You agree not to fight.
Well, let's look at 13. Anybody want to try 13? Yes, in the black shirt.
sanctified, condemned, repented, justified, glorified.
Anybody different? Blue shirt?
Condemned, repented, sanctified, justified, glorified.
Almost. I would almost agree with that one. Yes, in the back. That would be the one I would agree with. Condemned, repentant, justified, sanctified, glorified. Number 14, yes. No. No, we're elected, but not sanctified. Sanctification is a process that happens in time. How about number 14? Abortion, killing, murder, death, dying. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Anybody disagree? Yes, and yes. Someone back there.
Abortion, dying, death, killing, murder.
Why would you list abortion first? No, you've got it in decreasing connotation rather than increasing connotation. The concept of abortion assumes the concepts of murder, death, dying, killing, and not the other way around. The definition of killing does not include the definition of abortion, but the definition of abortion includes the definition of killing. Yes, in the back?
Dying, death, killing, murder.
I think that's the correct answer.
How do you find dying without the concept of death?
Not all who are dying.
Are dead.
That's true, but in order to define dying, you must have a concept of death to begin with. You can't describe somebody who is dying if you don't use the term death to describe them.
You can describe dying as being process of losing the functions of living, process of disputed death,
Denotatively, certainly, the number of those dead is fewer than the number of those who have been dying. Yes.
I agree with him, because I think she tends to put it more in chronological order. You're dying, and then you have death.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's what she's saying.
Yeah, I think in your argument, you used the term we talked about earlier, you're evading the question, because you're using different, you disguise the term death by saying losing the function of life. So you describe the concept of death, and you must have a concept of death in order to be able to describe what dying means. You can't describe dying without the process of death.
Go ahead.
I think that's confusing the idea of definitions with denotation. Because if you start with the largest circle, it's being dying, not all who begin to die complete the process of death.
Sure they do.
Be a smaller number.
All are dying, and all will die, and all will be dead. Right?
Some people are, say, dying from cancer and then they're healed, or, you know what I'm saying?
But again, I think we're confusing the idea. I think we're trying to say that the absolute is that denotation must decrease while connotation increases. And I don't think that holds in the case.
Go ahead.
How I approached it was, I thought that there are more who are dead. For those who are just alive now on the planet, after they're dying, there's a process. That over all time, there are more dead than those who are dying.
No.
You're introducing a new word.
No. else have any comment on this? Which is a broader or more general connotation, dying or death? Yes, sir.
I would say that not all people that are dying will die, because some people are dying, but then they're next day they walk out with something else.
Well, I would agree with you for a different reason. I think the category of those who are dying is larger than those who are dead. Logically, because to give you one example from Scripture, at the time of the return of Christ, all who are dying will not die. Every person in a hospital at the time Christ appears will not die. We're told that explicitly. Yes, in the back. Okay. Go ahead.
You have been freely substituting the word dead for the word death.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that will affect the outcome.
How does it affect it? How does it affect it?
When I think of death, death is a concept. Death is something that happens. Death is something that happens.
Okay. Well, I don't know if we're going to get any further on this question or not. Why don't we go on to 15? Anybody want to try 15? Yes. Almost. Black shirt, please. That would be the order I would choose. Yes, Jeremy.
Can't you have Orthodox before Christian, because you can be like an Orthodox for another religion? Orthodox Christian is following the rules or something. Orthodox, and you can be
It's okay if you understand it that way. I would accept that. Okay. I would accept that. Yes, sir.
I would put Calvin before Orthodox because there are Calvinists who are not Orthodox.
Any other comments on that?
That removes a further restriction on the word Orthodox.
Well, it comes from a Calvinist.
Yes, sir. Religious, theist, Christian, Orthodox, Calvinist. Number 25, I think that's on our 25 and 26. Definitions. Now, on page 20, there are guidelines for evaluating definitions, and on pages 25 and 26, we have some definitions that the author wants you to evaluate. Is the first one acceptable or unacceptable, and why, as a definition? Anybody out there? Okay, go ahead.
I think it's a acceptable definition because I think it states the necessary institution.
Okay, it's acceptable. It lists a broad category, rational creature, and it lists the differentia, created in the image of God, the distinguishing characteristics. Number 2, a circle is a line every point of which is equidistant from a given point. Is that acceptable or not? Okay, we have yes, and for the same reason. Poetry is the record of the best and happiest moments of the happiest and best minds.
Whoever wrote that doesn't know anything about poems.
Or they have a peculiar idea of happiest and best. So you would say that's unacceptable? Why? Which of the rules that the author has given us a few pages earlier does it violate? I heard it here. Go ahead. Well, number 3 is anything else. It's certainly circular. Yes, sir.
It can be the happiest and best of the happiest and best minds, but it can also be like with moments that is bad.
Okay, it's too narrow. That's not a good definition of poetry. It's too vague. It's too vague. Number 4, sin is any want of conformity unto or transgression of the law of God. Acceptable or unacceptable? Acceptable. Okay. Now, does anybody know where this is a quote from? Speak up if you know. What is sin? And where did that come from? Yes, right here. Okay, the Westminster Catechism, the shorter catechism. In fact, the catechism consists largely of definitions. It is the people who wrote it, the same people who wrote the Westminster Confession, were very insistent that terms be defined carefully and the definitions be stated in such a form that they could be easily memorized. Number 5, reason means non-revelational knowledge. Yes, sir. Too broad. Anybody disagree? Anybody say it's too narrow? Guess I'm the only one. It's unacceptable. I think we can agree with that as a definition of reason. But again, if an author wants to write a book and say, this is how I'm going to use the word reason, he can get away with it. It's also ambiguous, I think. I don't think it's very clear as to what non-revelational knowledge is. Non, right. That was a violation of one of the rules. Number 6, saving faith is believing what you know isn't so. What rule does it violate? One of the ones we just mentioned. Yes. Okay. It's a negative term. Number 7, miracle is a violation of a natural law. Too narrow. Okay, I would have said too broad almost on that one. Or vague, anyway. It's unacceptable. A prime number is an integer between 1 and 10, not divisible without remainder by any number except himself in unity. Unacceptable? No. Too narrow. We have to agree on that one. That one's too narrow. Number 9, sanctification is the work of God's free grace, whereby we are renewed in the whole man after the image of God and are enabled more and more to die unto sin and live.